You're sitting in the doctor's office, your naked body barely covered by a paper gown. The doctor says your results are in and you really need to lower your stress. You agree enthusiastically, mostly so you can put your pants back on and get on with your day. But you're left wondering, reduce my stress? How? It almost feels like another thing on the to-do list. My next guest is the co-founder and CEO of Empathic Practice, a holistic stress management clinic. He combines his master's in positive psychology, 20 years of marketing experience, and a decade of business branding with hundreds of hours teaching meditation to coach professionals, train corporate teams, and support individuals on living a more mindful and meaningful life. Today, we're going to explore stress as an addiction, an identity, and community, as we ask the question, how do we reduce stress when we can't even hear ourselves think? This is the Curious Introvert podcast with me, Meredith. Around here, we explore taboo questions and societal blind spots. My mission, and yours if you choose to accept it, is to inspire curiosity by exploring the nuance and paradox of our world. Please help me welcome the man who lives to hear other people's stories and sees art in everything, from Sao Paulo to Pensacola, Felipe Muñoz. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Meredith. I was so excited.
Absolutely. I couldn't be more excited to talk about stress. But it's relevant. It's relevant.
It is.
And you see a lot of it in your clinic. So what's showing up with your clients lately?
I think that the trend for the past few years, I'll be honest, that is something that came before COVID, but that it was exacerbated by COVID and it remains, it is loneliness. People feel very disconnected from themselves and others. And I think the way that social media pushes us to feel like we are together, right? Or to give base of comparison that you are not together.
Right.
Kind of make that worse.
That's a tricky one because we often think of, like, you and I are both introverts. So we think like, ooh, people, they are the stress, right? So loneliness can seem counterintuitive, but it's definitely like a common thread among everything. Do you see the symptoms of that stress show up differently in your clients? I'm wondering what that looks like too.
Yes, I think depending on the demographic, you see that coming in different ways and how they cope with it in different ways. And I would add that to the loneliness. It's not just wanting to be with other people, right? But it's this longing to belong with other people. So to what you're saying about being an introvert, right? You might not be wanting to be in a large social gathering, or like the new person in a party, but you still want to have meaningful conversations with someone that is dear to you or to get to know new people. And I think that is causing people to distance themselves more from each other because they are not even knowing how to start those conversations. And that's the thing with stress, right? You can compound that stress in different ways. And if you do not know how to manage that, then you're burning out.
So when they're coming to you, they're obviously at some point of distress, right? What are some of the symptoms that they're complaining of that you, as someone who has like a bigger view over everyone, are relating back to either the loneliness or other sources of stress?
So imagine stress as a bell curve, right? If you have no stress, then you're just demotivated. You might be depressed, might not be doing anything. If you have too much stress, then you are facing burnout. You're very anxious. You're just not going to do anything because there's too much happening. You're overwhelmed. Usually the clients or the people that I see are on the end of that spectrum there. Rarely they are navigating within the spectrum. So the main complaints are that, like, I'm stalled, I'm stuck, I'm overwhelmed, feeling too anxious, I have too much going on. And they usually find one aspect of life and they grasp to it as the symptom. Like, so like, oh, I'm failing at work, I'm failing at my marriage, I'm failing as a parent, or like, I need to work out or self-care, whatever it is, and usually something that they see as a trend or some other people are telling them, without realizing that that is just one aspect of like what is being compounded upon them.
That's so interesting that you say that because, I mean, I think we all do that where we're like, I feel unwell inside. Let me scan my external environment to see what could be the potential cause. But how do you know when your stress is coming from the outside and causing an internal experience of stress versus it's internal and causing that stress? Like, for example, maybe you are going through perimenopause, I'm sure not you, but you know what I mean? Like, or well, andropause, men go through something like that too. Or you have Lyme disease or, mold toxicity, or, it could be internal. How do you help tease that apart?
It's a matter of self-awareness. And I think the majority of population have not learned how to be self-aware. Although we, in the Western world, live in societies that are very individualistic and we look a lot to the self. We don't explore the self and try to understand the self. We stop on a first layer, and you can call that the ego, right? Where that is the filter that we see the world. So we're seeing the world through our lenses without exploring what is happening internally. And when something externally is causing those stressors, right, we see that as the problem. So if you have a rock on your shoe, and you're immediately faulting the rock for being inside your shoe, not yourself for not cleaning your shoe before putting it on.
Right. I think there's like a cultural element here too. I love that American culture really allows you to kind of craft. You can craft your job. We were just talking about that before we hit record. You can craft your family life. What do you want your life to look like? But it takes a lot of intention in hearing your own voice of, what you want. And I wonder how much of our stress is caused by kind of the momentum of the cultural push towards things we don't even know that if we want that or not. And how much of it is, the rock in the shoe. So how much of stress is because we can't answer the question, what do you want?
I think the majority of the stress is that.
Yeah.
Because we're stressing about something that we do not know. If you don't know what you want, right, that becomes something to stress you.
Yeah.
Like I was mentioning someone that is demotivated and they cannot find something that motivates, that makes them want to find what can stress them in a sense, right, that pushes them and challenges them enough to want to do something. On the other end of the spectrum, we have someone that may think that they know what they want and is just like taking and doing, and then you're overwhelmed, burning yourself out. So I don't think we contemplate or reflect enough as a society and as individuals to explore that. And if you allow me, like going back to my demographic and the majority of clients and the things that kind of you pointed out, 80% of the people that I have attended in the past 8 years are women. And the majority of those women between 35 and 50 years old. The majority of those are asking themselves, how did I get here? What am I doing? Is this the life that I want, right? They're questioning their relationships, their careers, their perspective of self, who they are. That is in alignment, not just like with how we develop as humans, but like how hormones start affecting us, how we navigate that. Then psychologically, like what is the baggage that you have and what you left behind and you did not explore earlier and you don't know how to tend to. Sometimes when you're an empty nester, then like you don't know what to do. We don't have a purpose with a child, right? Or maybe you retired and now you don't have a career, and then you're reviewing what is happening.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. I think that people are stressed most of the time in a negative way because they do not know what they want and they don't have dedication of time to reflect on that enough, you know?
Well, there's kind of like this cultural, treadmill of stress that we benefit from. It creates community. Like, how are you supposed to relate to other parents if you're not stressed out? If you're at the ball field and one parent is complaining to another, which is pretty common, and you're just like zen and everything's great, they're just not going to like you. You know what I mean? So it almost benefits us in that way. And then also in the way of like inspiring care. So like if you're stressed, then someone might take care of you a little bit more or might say, you know what, I'll take the kids, you go do this. And so you have self-justification to go get a massage or take that time, but it doesn't really create space for that intentional thought. But we do benefit from it.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. I think that culturally speaking, right, we have a saying for that, right? Misery loves company.
Yeah, that's true.
Water cooler conversations, if not like exalting the stresses in life and trying to find common ground with the problems. Even in marketing. In marketing, it is part of a 101, right? Like, how do you market something? You find the pain points. And you market or the pleasure points, right? Like what is that the person wants to feel or what is that they are feeling or lacking. So we are conditioned to that. But at the same stake, joy also loves company, right? Like dancing with a partner, it brings a lot more dopamine and it makes you feel a lot better than talking shit about the coach, right, of the junior league there.
Right. Yeah, we didn't even talk about gossiping. Like gossiping is like that stress that bonds people, but it's like when you've decided not to do that, then you have to remove yourself from the community. When we were just talking about loneliness. So how do you, for your clients, suggest a helpful like pattern interrupt for those communal situations where they're like, okay, I'm trying to unrut myself.
Yeah.
This is the rut and I keep falling into it.
Well, that's what is interesting about the demographic of people in their 40s specifically, right? Because it is a point that says a point of no return, but every year is that, right? But when it gets to that point, it's almost like there's a light bulb on people's minds where they're like, oh, I need to do something about this. So a lot of people like stop drinking or are reviewing their career or shifting partnerships. And I think that is what creates this gap, because all that you knew, right, what was familiar, it's not present in the same way, and you're having to learn all over again. And now learning with a different mindset, but also sometimes not equipped to navigate that contemplation and know what you want. And that becomes stressful, right? Like if you're trying to dig a hole, right, and you're using your hands, it's going to be a lot less efficient than if you are trying to do it with a shovel. So I think we are not equipped with the right tools to deal with stress and understand stress in the way that can help us to feel motivated. So the stressors that you were talking about that like make people like come together are not the same stressors that are making them feel truly stressed. It's almost like those are superficial consequences of what might be happening around them, but it's not the root cause of like why they are not like liking the baseball game. It goes back to what I teach in mindfulness, that is understanding like what is the situation that I'm in? Like how am I integrating whatever I'm going through in my life every day of my life? And it might sound overwhelming, right? It might sound like overthinking, but it's more of like, how can I naturally be myself to a point of comfort where it's not stressful, right? It's like, there's not going to be overwhelming and it's going to motivate me to just want to be more of me.
Don't you, I mean this with so much respect and love for you. Don't you think that's a little existential for the stress out 40-year-old parent? Like they are so in like checkmark mode they're like so pragmatic that these thoughts that you're saying are like so broad that they don't give that person enough traction to like, put on the brakes and pivot.
I think so. And I think that that's the problem, right? We are not contemplating existentialism in ways that is not a crisis mode. And we talk about existential crisis, we don't talk about what is the opposite of that.
True.
And as a 40-year-old parent, right, I can say that it is very hard to navigate all that.
Yeah.
It is a lot of pressure in different ways for like what you are demanded. And there are the times to think about that and to contemplate that and sit with that. But at the end of the day, it's not what you're thinking of it, right? It's how you are applying that in every day. Like that's what I see with my clients. Like the click is when they stop worrying and stressing about it, about the existential dilemma, and they start just existing as they are, right? And suddenly they found that creative work and art kind of helps them to feel more alive and be themselves, or that a meditation practice or a meditative practice helps them to feel more centered, right? Even if they didn't have to put on their calendar and put on their schedule. That if they leave their phone aside and they're just playing with their kids or having dinner with their spouse, right? They feel a little bit happier. So it's not about the thinking, it's about the being.
Where you're at. Do you ever find that clients show signs of addiction to stress?
Yes, I think the majority of the people that I attend are addicted to stress. I think that I have an addiction to stress in some way or form, and I'm dealing with that, right? Why? Because the majority of people that are looking to improve themselves are already in that in the edge of perfectionism or type A or being really busy, and now they are overwhelmed or something happened that took out the motivation from their lives. So I think you can be addicted to stress in the sense of it's only what is familiar to you and you do not know how to deal without it.
Like it's a baseline.
And that's why I say stress management. Stress is important. How you manage the stress, understanding how much stress is positive to you, like to keep you going. Like I said, the bell curve, it's like right at the top. It's what we call Eustress, is the positive stress. We are unfamiliar with that because we keep pushing ourselves. So like usually when you get to a certain point, instead of like navigating back and forth in the top of the curve, you either push yourself too much to the edge, or you just stop everything and you go back to the beginning. And as any, a bell curve would work as you evolve, your baseline changes through time, right? You build resilience. And that's a different quality that comes from facing and understanding stress.
It's interesting to think about inverted resilience for someone who has a chaotic baseline, right? Because when I think about resilience to stress, I think I can handle a lot of stress. But the inverted version of that is I can't handle good times. You know, I definitely have known people over the years that it's like things would be peaceful and I would just, okay, let's give it 2 weeks, 3 maybe. And they would like physically hurt themselves or get ill or like crazy financial troubles would befall on them. It was like they were a magnet for it. And they just, I don't know, it seems like they found it or it found them. What kind of signs of stress addiction have you seen?
I would ponder upon that without referring to it as addiction. Because
Yeah.
I think is more subconscious than that. It's not that the person doesn't know how to relax. It's that they maybe have not exerted enough of that activity, right, to become familiar enough with it, or that the absence of being busy or being sick or being in a strain of whatever sort, that is what stresses them out.
Like
Because,
not being in crisis
yeah,
mode.
because they don't know how to deal with what is the opposite of crisis. The crisis is not stressful to them, right? They might make it sound stressful, but that's their baseline. They know how to deal with it. It's chaotic. We all live in chaos, right? We pretend that there's order into something, but it is entropy. Right? Everything is just happening and not in the way that we want to do. So our brains are just like computing all this information and trying to predict what is the next word that comes from our mouth, the next gesture that it is. For someone that the only way that they can predict it is more chaotic to someone else's perspective, right? Well, that becomes what's the subconscious norm to effective stress management in their own. But then our bodies and our minds take this strain, right? So it's differentiating what is stress, what is straining. You are causing physical and psychological damage when you are exerting strain over something over time without having any other type of conditioning, right? I'd like to use the example of going to the gym. If you're going to exercise and all that you are exercising is your biceps, right? And then that's all that you're doing. Every day you're just doing that, right? What is it going to happen?
Just have big biceps.
Yeah. And maybe
You only lift things that one way.
when you are on your 60s, on your 70s, and you need to get up from a chair, your bicep is not going to be that helpful, right?
Right, yeah.
But that's essentially what we do, right? We end up, careers are like that. It's like, this is going to be it. I'm going to just like have this path, or marriage. Oh, this is the way. I'm going to have this one person for my entire life, or parenting. Oh, this is the way that we educate. These are my family values. This is the church that I go, right? Everything becomes very black and white, very assertive. And whenever you have a rupture from that norm, what happens? You don't know how to do with it because you didn't practice, your legwork. So I think this conversation is more around that. No, it's not the addiction. It is the familiarity.
Well, that's a really much more hopeful outlook, because we tend to see the label of addict as like a permanent label, like you always have to introduce yourself as, hi, I'm Meredith, I'm an addict, like for the rest of your life. But if it's like, hey, I'm Meredith and today's a leg day, right? As like a code for I'm working through a new normal. That's really beautiful. Is there certain modalities that you find are more helpful for people who are habituated towards chaos for them to recalibrate?
Yeah, yes. Doesn't matter what is happening in your life. It's about like going back to certain basics. And the most basic thing that I teach, and I think that everyone should pay attention, is breathing. This sounds ridiculous every time that I say, because, it's like you just roll your eyes. But the aspect of self-awareness needs to start with that. Mm-hmm. And I think there's some poetry to it, right? Like your breath defines every living moment on this earth. So as soon as you are birthed into the world, you take this first breath that it starts to dictate your experience of the rest of your life until what? Your last breath. If you are aware of that and you just stop for a moment, any time of the day, to notice that, a lot of things come to mind that are more positive than not, because you start recognizing the value and privilege of being alive. You start recognizing how your body is working. Also, when you start paying attention more naturally, your body starts to regulate and adjust and to relax. And if it's not the case, if you're having like something that you're like shallow breathing or like breathing too rapidly, you also can assess that and be like, why am I doing that? And find the tools to modify that so you can calm down and you can pay more attention, right? So that is the most basic that I think anyone and everyone can do it. And we do not do enough, but our bodies do it very naturally. That's why we sigh. That's why we yawn. That's why, like even when you're cussing, you're like putting that in the world, right? Like you're taking a deep breath and like you're relieved. So we need to just pay more attention to how we are responding.
So when you say breathing for the uninitiated,
Of course.
Are you talking about in for 4, out for 8? Are you talking about box breathing where you're like in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4? What is your go-to for that person who really has that baseline of chaos and identity that is tied to stress? Hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm busy and stressed. And it's like, it's such a default. They don't even know, like they're really struggling.
Mm-hmm.
What is the modality of breath work that you recommend?
I'll use an example as like my 5-year-old throwing a tantrum. As many times as I try to say, like, just take a deep breath, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as many times as they reply, I don't want to take a deep breath. I think that is kind of the mindset that we go to when we're being taught things like this. You want to challenge it. So I don't start with like box breathing or any of those exercises. What I start is just notice how you're breathing. Just breathe, right? But pay attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
So with my 5-year-old, I'm like in hysteric mode, right? Had this holding him and just breathing with him. That's what I do with him. It helps him to co-regulate. I don't change my breathing. I'm just breathing until like he can matches that. For me, right? For myself, if I'm not doing anything and I feel like I need to breathe, I don't try to just take a deep breath. I just close my eyes and I pay attention to the mechanisms of breath. So that's what I would recommend to anyone that is non-initiated. And like I say, it is stop whatever you're doing and just notice how your breath works, right? Notice the air touching your nostrils. Notice it moving through your skull and your throat. Notice the rise and fall of your chest. Notice the diaphragm expanding, contracting. Notice the temperature when you exhale. You're just noticing. You're not trying to change. You're not trying to calculate or count. That can come later, if you need, and those are different tools, right? But first, it's just awareness. When you start doing that, your brain is going to stop going to other places because you are demanding focus. And then this analysis of like just the cycle will help you to move through the emotions a little bit more calmly because you're kind of forcing yourself to. And as you do that, everything else starts to settle. Your body starts to calm down. The majority of panic attacks are self-caused because you enter this mode of predicting what is next. So as soon as you feel like that chest pain, you're predicting that is a panic attack coming. And you start breathing shallowly. And then you start saying like, oh, now I'm going to black out. And it's true. And you're going to cause all that because then you're breathing more shallowly. And then what happens? You don't have enough oxygen and you can faint, right? It's very hard to get off that mode right away though, right? It needs practice. So don't try this in a crisis mode. Try these things like when you are like just listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
Like pause right now and just notice. Notice what is this cycle of breath and see how you feel before and after.
I could see how that would increase your mind-body connectedness, your proprioception and that could help you later. Like, for example, I used to have this group of people that I worked with, And I was really struggling with a lot of jaw pain at that time. And there was some sort of break in our meetings or something where I didn't see them for a while. And then I went and had a meeting with them, and I was like, oh, that's where my jaw pain's coming from, And so I was able to make that connection and make the prescriptive change that I needed in order to overcome that. Because I think especially the type A listener, they're like, Felipe, I need 5 easy steps, and you have them. Like, you have all the things that you could list. But what I love is that you're really putting the power back into the individual's lap, because we have such a prescriptive society where it's like, do you have a headache? We have Excedrin migraine.
Yep.
Do you have a tummy ache? We have Tums, and so it's one for one. And they tell you, they being like the commercial or whoever. And so to tell yourself where you're at and what you need is a completely new set of skills. That is definitely leg day.
Mm-hmm. And to me, it's like this culture of remedy, right? Medicine is a remedy.
Yeah.
You ask, like, what are the symptoms? Like, well, we know the symptoms of stress, right? Or the symptoms that people come to. Treating the symptoms is not what is going to sort this out.
Yeah.
It is reviewing, understanding where the symptoms are coming from. And the only way to do that is having awareness about it, right? Understanding yourself. And if you cannot start connecting with your breath, right, with this more primordial aspect of who you are, how are you going to go deeper into other levels of existence?
Yeah, that's so true. I do want to examine some of those unexamined daily habits, though, if you don't mind.
No, please.
Maybe we could do like a 1 to 10 scale. No 5s allowed, though, because that's completely unhelpful. But maybe this would kind of crack open the personal experimentation for the listener.
Sure thing.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being completely harmless, 10 being, oh my God, stop it. How stress-inducing would you say is eating lunch at your desk? I told you they'd be practical.
I hate the idea of like eating lunch at your desk, honestly, like on a personal level. Mm-hmm. And I think it is highly stress inducing. So I would say 10 on, oh my God, stop.
Okay, 10.
Yeah, I'm very extreme too. So
hey, that's okay. You're the expert here.
Stop eating. Why? Everything surrounding that situation, it is just going to promote more stress, right? Yeah, you're not going to achieve that deadline faster because you're eating at the table. You know that, that should have been sorted out before you set up the deadline or you were imposed the deadline, right? It's more about boundaries.
Oh, yeah.
Then you're also not going to digest that food well because you're probably eating very fast.
Right.
So now you're causing stress in your body. Huh? And then whatever you're eating, because it's not being digested well, is also not going to affect your brain in a way that is more productive or better for what you're doing. Besides that, there's probably your posture that you're missing out on having social time with other people or going outside and being in nature. So all these things that could reduce your stress are not there. So that's why it's a 10.
That's good. Okay, what about having a cluttered house?
Having a cluttered house, I would say it is a 6.
A 6.
Yeah, it's not quite a 5. But I say this as the first thing that I notice with clients when they start getting their thoughts in place, they start decluttering the house. Our homes often are portrait of our minds, and the objects, the memories, the trash, the dishes on the sink, or how many TVs you have, or the sofa. When you think about those items around it, you might not think a lot of that, but that is kind of like a metaphor to how you're organizing your thoughts. So that clutter is not what is causing the stress, right? It is a reflection of your stress.
Interesting. More the thermostat instead of the thermometer. What about scrolling right before bedtime?
I would say that is 8 because you can avoid that. And it's one thing that you're probably doing, right? Impulsively. It is going to cause a certain amount of stress because it's going to delay your sleep and it's going to keep your brain awake for a little bit longer. Depending on what you are into, though, that is also going to affect your dreams, right? So that can be positive, right? It might, I don't know, what the type of ads that are showing up on your feed that later on you're like, maybe I should try that.
I think it's important to examine these like more mundane aspects of life because we sometimes see or tell ourselves, yeah, I'm unwinding. I'm scrolling. Yeah, I'm unwinding. I'm sitting at my desk watching YouTube while I have my lunch. But, we don't realize like, oh, we're not, which is why I really love the whole idea of like, you have to check in with yourself. You're your primary caretaker. You have to do it. So one more I want to ask you, 1 to 10, is multitasking.
I'll say multitasking is probably like 6, 7. Let's see.
6, 7. I'm glad I at least didn't give you 5. Wait a minute, you just did the thing. So I don't have kids, so I was like, went right over me. 6, 7.
Okay. Was that a different?
Chris got it.
Different demographic on you.
Yeah,
That's all right.
sorry, I'm too old for that.
Yes.
Oh, you're terrible.
I would say it's not the worst, right? Like, but what that brings to you is a distance of, like you say, like the awareness to what you should be doing, right? Of course, monotasking, it is going to be way more beneficial to whatever you need to be doing, but it's almost inevitable to be multitasking, the world that we live. You don't realize, but you're multitasking when you are doing normal things like driving.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're paying attention to multiple things. So we just evolve to that. We adapt and we learn to multitask. Is it beneficial to you? No. Is it going to be stress inducing? It's going to depend on a lot of the different tasks that you're doing at the same time. More often than not, whatever holds more weight is going to cause a higher amount of frustration, which then will cause the stress.
I want to go back to something that you said a couple of times earlier, but that we kind of went in a different direction. You were talking about eustress, Eustress, meaning stress that's good for you. How do we know if the stress that we're experiencing is like, woohoo, leg day, or if it's like, oh gosh, I need to get out of this situation?
I think we know. Right?
Do we though?
I think
Do we?
I do think we know because we define eustress as this amount of stress that you're confident enough to be challenged by, and you take that, right? It usually relates to skill building or like a new phase of life that you're taking into. So I think inherently we do know. We know what motivates us. Like deep inside, we know that. And that's the positive stress. That is the stuff that uplifts us, that gives us joy, that puts us in a state of flow. It is it's a positive amount of stress. And to an artist, it's the blank canvas, right before you start painting.
So it is the purpose, because you said skill building and you said new season of life. And both of those things have to do with outcome. So is it this is stress for a good cause? Is that what makes it eustress? Or is it the dosage of it? Like, okay, this is beyond inoculation. We're getting into full-blown virus of stress.
I think it is more nuanced than that, right? Like we're trying to find like what is black and white
Yeah.
and defining here, and it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And because you can start like, building a skill and take that to a level where it becomes overwhelming and stressful. It is more about the motivation, not just the purpose, right? But how good you feel about it. So it's more about the level of confidence that you have taking over that. So if you think about work and you have a boss that comes with a new project for you and you feel capable of taking that project, you are going to take that stress and confidently move through it. You need that to keep motivated and to keep you on everyday work. If it is an amount of work, even if it is a project that you enjoy, that is more that you want to take, and you start feeling not confident enough, or the deadline is too crushed, or whatever it is, then the amount of stress starts to ramp up. The same project, right? But changing different factors about it. Or if like every day is not a project that you enjoy or that motivates you, and then you start feeling bored and the work's not motivating or allowing you to fulfill what you want, whatnot. So that sweet spot there is that it is being challenged and having the confidence to face the challenge. If that is skill, if that's career, if that is a family, if it is self-development, whatever that is, it's understanding that that stress is necessary in your life for your growth.
So enough to push, but not too much that we shut down.
Correct. The metaphor I use is a seed, right? So what happens for a seed to sprout? It acquires a lot of energy, right? And uses the energy to push through the soil. And that is stressful. It's very stressful for the plant because it's breaking the skin, right, of the seed. So that stem can come through, and then it breaks through the soil, which also requires a lot of energy and a lot of push so it can start to grow. If the soil is too hard, it doesn't. If the soil is not nurtured and doesn't have enough energy, it doesn't, right? So those are the two ends of the spectrum. Not enough energy, too hard, and then you don't sprout. And after it sprout, great. Like you started, the stress kind of like made you start something. Well, now you tend to it. That's the management part of it, right? Because then if there's too much water, if there's not enough nutrients, like whatever it is, it's not going to allow that growth. So when you found what is that motivates you and what is that challenges you, it's not about pushing too hard, pushing too little, and you need that self-awareness, right?
In the same vein of the nature metaphor, seasons. So we have these seasons of stress, seasons of growth, and there's seasons where we, for lack of a better word, retreat, or we want to care for ourselves more intentionally. How do we, within ourselves, tell the difference? Like maybe what would be some clues to know the difference between escapism and self-care?
That's a good question. Because everything can be escape, right?
Yeah.
Working in the wellness industry, I saw so many people justify self-care, but utilizing as bypassing their issues or just escaping reality altogether. And I think that is, again, a matter of understanding and knowing yourself, being honest with yourself, which I think that is one of the hardest things for people to do. We live in a society that says, fake it till you make it, where it's very performative in different ways. You need to present yourself a certain way at work or at family gatherings or whatnot, and then those things are exhausting. So it's not just the seasons of life that you're living. It's like understanding who you are to navigate those seasons, because it's gonna rain, but you might be the type of person that likes to go for a run on the rain, and it might be cold, but it's Florida and you live in the Midwest the whole life, and so it doesn't feel that bad. It's a matter of perspective, and that perspective can only come from within when you understand yourself better.
Hey there. I love that you're loving this topic so far. If you're into curious conversations like this, you'll want to hit the follow button on your podcast player. This will make sure you never miss out on the good stuff. Okay, you're the best. Back to the show. A lot of people have like rituals that they do every day or regularly to kind of slip into that self-care on a regular basis. And a lot of that involves things like medical marijuana or, alcohol. And those things can be medicinal and help you kind of tell your body, okay, it is time to reset. And it's just kind of like that pattern interrupt that we need. And it's great for that. How do we discern within ourselves where we're like not integrating, where we're just kind of using it as a crutch, like it's just become a part of our stress habit. It's really just an extension of our stress. It's not really truly like a moment of pause.
Going back to the escapism or this culture of remedy, something just to fix what is happening right now.
Yeah.
I think the first, positioning as a ritual and understanding that ritual implies intention. If not, it's just a routine.
That's interesting. The difference between routine and ritual.
Yeah, routine can be a ritual or vice versa, right?
Yeah.
But they are not inclusive of each other.
But the connotation of routine versus ritual is kind of different, right? Because like a routine is you wake up when your alarm goes off. It's not a ritual. Like it's definitely like, okay, we're doing this. But a ritual has this vibe of sacredness to it, like where you would take a deep breath before doing it, like you would give thanks before you eat your meal.
I think it's even simpler than that. Right? It feels still sacred, when the sacred, again, is the intention. We were talking before recording about coffee, and you were mentioning your habits. Like it's like, I'm a little snob about my coffee. It's this Costa Rican brand. I do my French press, this much, 16 ounces of water, 2 cups. That's a ritual. There's a lot of intention involved there. Even if it doesn't sound sacred, it is sacred to you because it carries so much meaning behind it. It's not just a routine. A routine is like, the coffee is made by the machine at this time every day. It's automatic. Now, that's a routine. So that's why computers do routines, right? They don't do rituals. So it's checking the boxes.
I like that a lot. There is a lot of care to use the coffee example, into the coffee. There's like joy and excitement and like, oh, I can't wait to have my coffee and, my special mug and all of that. So I do think that creates a clear distinction that we can apply to lots of things. So when it comes to medical marijuana, for example, or even alcohol, like, are we doing this with care or is this, a reflex?
Yes. And when you talk about escaping, right?
Yeah.
It is around that. Like, what is the intention behind it? Or when we're talking about using breathing as a way to reset, what is the intention behind it? So to deal with stress, to address the stress, it takes a minute to first assess what is happening to you. Then you go a little bit deeper and you access what is that a little bit deeper. Once you understand that, and you address it. And alliteration exists because semantic means something. We put meaning into things. And you might be feeling stressed because you are not addressing it and you're not accessing what is causing the stress. So when you escape, right, when you are, I'm just going to take my joint break, right? And then like now my mind is not into it anymore and I don't need to think about it. Well, you're numbing and postponing what is inevitable, and later on will catch up with you. You're just working out the biceps, right? When alcohol does the same thing, or any other substance, right? You can go to Costa Rica for an ayahuasca trip and having a blast there and see God and the gnomes and whatever else.
God and the gnomes. I like those. That's very specific to examples. We'll have to talk about that later.
And you come back and you're like, well, we still have to, go work at Starbucks. What do I do with that? It might change a little bit of your, sense of gratitude about working wherever you're working and serving and connection with the world. Same way that like playing video games with your friends might feel like you're connecting with them. But is it because isn't like the reason why you're going to do the psychedelic trip because you're trying to reach something greater than you, right? Or deeper within. The same reason that you are going to play video games with your friends because you just want to be with your friends and you're not addressing those things, right? Like you're just postponing what inevitable is.
So when it comes to integrating peace of mind, is it something that people at their current high stress state can dabble in, or do they need a really big first push, like an ayahuasca trip in Costa Rica, or like, a ketamine assisted therapy, or one of the other more, we'll call them big modalities for that big push? Because I kind of, in my mind, I always play the tape of the most skeptical listener. And I hear them say, yeah, I do that already, and whether they do or they don't, they feel like they do. And so is that enough? Or in your experience with clients, do you find that they need that big shove with one of those events?
I think we're a society that is very reactive, just in general. The majority of people that I have met that went through like great changes in life was after something big, usually related with loss. Divorced, parent that died, bankruptcy. And it's like, okay, now I need to restart. Now I need to do something different. Now I'm going to be the better version of myself. In more recent years, there is this trend that like you can do this self-reset by doing psychedelics, right? Being that assisted or independently. But it became a little bit more medicinal in that sense. And there is a lack of like, what do you do afterwards? So you went through a divorce, for example, right? The person went through a divorce and now like, oh, so I need to go to therapy. I need to work out. I need to change how I'm eating. And maybe I need to change like my work, right? They start changing everything because they want to do something different than what it was before. We don't spend enough time looking at what it was working, right? And the things that were not caused by us. So in the sense, the skeptical that is saying like, I'm already doing all that. Do I need to go through a big shift? The integration is start at intention. So if you're already being intentional about the things that you are doing, the rituals that you are positioned, that there is a reason and a pathway, right, to how you're doing the things, I wouldn't question you. I wouldn't say like, so are you stressed? Are you like in the reality, or are you making something bigger than what it is? Like let's make a different assessment of like what is that you are going through. And with that, you start focusing on the causal aspect of it, and you start recognizing more the presence of what it is. We extrapolate and catastrophize a lot, and goes back to mindfulness, right? So you ask yourself, are you that stressed? Because maybe you are not, right? Maybe that person that is skeptical in the sense that is asking, are you that overwhelmed or that demotivated? And if you are you really doing those things? Go back, be honest with yourself. Be mad at me, that's fine, right? Because those questions are to poke you, are to motivate you to do something, are to cause some level of stress that is just enough that is going to push you to like out of the comfort zone and into a place of growth.
That's so interesting that you say that, because it kind of goes back to how we benefit from the identity of stress, as a personality. Like You can relate to people. Maybe people feel sorry for you. You get more assistance from your spouse. Maybe you get some more support from your children. So that's really interesting to examine the truth of those as a part of I think what you said, the pathway.
Mm-hmm.
As we close, I want to talk a little bit more about the practical part, the nitty gritty of that pathway, different ideas to inspire people of what that could look like. Because sometimes it just takes, I don't know, like a novel thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we were talking, I think, a little bit about hobbies before we recorded as well. And this is what I wanted to ask you, because there's so many interesting, like primal screaming. That is so interesting to me. I don't think that's for me, but that's very interesting. Sauna, massage, yoga, meditation, ayahuasca retreats, medical marijuana, ketamine-assisted therapy. I mean, the list goes on and on, right? But I kind of wonder, do we just need a hobby? Like, do we just need something novel in our lives to look forward to, something to take up space other than eating lunch at our desk?
I'll bring that in a different perspective. The purpose of being human, in my opinion, it is in alignment with this podcast, is being curious. Mm-hmm. We are very curious creatures. And I think that is very clear in the way that we create a society that manifests problems to solve other problems, right? Yeah. And it just perpetuates this infinite way of sorting it out, where our panic is that like robots or AI are going to replace us of working, because then heck, what we're going to do, right? It is almost... unfathomable. I think that's the word, to think of a world where we can just be creative, be curious, be human, be with each other, where we don't have to worry. Like, we don't have to worry about money. We don't have to worry about collective well-being or health. Mm-hmm. Every time that we start thinking about those things that are just like our collective de-stressors, right? Where you're not on survival anymore. We start creating new problems to justify why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. But it comes back to that self-awareness, knowing that that's what we're doing. And I see that as connected to that baseline of chaos. If we are acclimated to problem solving and putting out fires, and there's no fires, then, well, shoot, better get on Twitter, start fighting people. You know what I mean? So it is a part of the modern way to exist. What kinds of tools do you have at Empathic Practice that people might want to plug into as a part of their path?
We created this company with focus on community and connection. I know the way that I talk about all these things sound like very utopic, right? I'm not naive to think that those things fall into place in a rapid manner. So the business that we created, it is to invite people to explore these tools that we were talking about. Whatever tool it is, right? If you're using medical marijuana, if it is meditation, if it is peer support or therapy or psychedelic assisted therapy, all that, those are venues, right, for you to start thinking of yourself in a different manner, with a different intention, and creating better habits that then can become new routines and maybe turn into rituals that then will help you to integrate what you need in your everyday life. So you can come to our office and you can shop herbs for like a smokable blend for focus, right? So you don't need to multitask and then like drop that down from like 6, 7 to, a 3. Or you can go and sit down with a coach and do neurofeedback so you can realize that you can meditate and experience coherence within your mind when someone talks with like a soothing voice and you are in a zone. And then there's a little number that tells you like, hey, look how great you are. You can get there, right? Where you can come and sit down with a therapist and they just like cry everything that you need to cry, commiserate, and put out there, because that gives you a restart to then like get a new baseline for what you need to experience next. I joke because like with my marketing background, the amount of people that do not know what empathic practice does, it is funny to fascinating. But that's by design. From the beginning, the important part to me was that, one, you understand that this is a place where we practice what, right? And how do we do that? It's through any modality that you're here. You come here, you're going to feel well, you're going to feel welcome, and you're going to feel like this is a space where you can be yourself. Because I think at the end of the day, that's what we miss. So if you're coming for a free support group, a recovery group, a meditation group, all those are free services, right? And to me, it's the foundation of who we are. It's creating these safe spaces and brave spaces for people to start looking at themselves, identifying what is stressing them, and try to manage that in a more feasible way and not alone.
Very well said. I'm going to put empathic practice in the show notes so that people can connect. And I hope that they do, because you have so many good services that even if someone wants to connect virtually, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got coaching and just, I mean, I think the best way for people to know what's going on from my perspective is to get your newsletter. Because I always love seeing, okay, what's going on this month? And then, okay, I'm going to plug into that. And then I can kind of plan my month out, you know, like, oh, I have a stressful week this week. I'm going to do that drop-in meditation session. Or, oh, you know, you have herbs that you're selling now. Cool. I'm going to do the sip and shop on a Saturday. So I just appreciate what you're doing there. And thank you for this awesome conversation.
No, thank you, Meredith. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thanks for listening. Since you've made it this far, you are officially invited to my private Facebook group. In there, you can easily give me direct feedback on episodes, weigh in on future topics, and participate in giveaways. Search MFR Curious Insiders on Facebook or click the link in the show notes. If you liked this episode, you'll also like the one with the registered holistic nutritionist who reveals which foods could be causing your anxiety. That's episode 298. And stay tuned next week for a remastered favorite with a couple who retired at age 29. Until then, keep it curious.